Let's talk ACC basketball, shall we? For 30 minutes, that's what we are going to do. Dari Noken, former Maryland All-ACC selection, Adrian Branch. So here we go, getting into this league where it's very top-heavy. Now, you look at the ESPN USA Today Coaches Poll AB to start the season. You got two ACC teams in the top 6 nationally with North Carolina and Duke. How many beyond 6 in the top 25? 0. Those are the only two. Now, we're going to run through the entire conference and maybe give a sleeper, a dark horse type of team. But let's start with Carolina here. 5 returning starters, another good recruiting class for Roy Williams. How nasty, how dangerous, how good is North Carolina?
They're everything that you just said. They're nasty, they're good, they're talented, they have experience. Starting with Harrison Barnes, he's as good as it gets. 6'8", can score from the outside, has the ability to close out and hit huge shots like he did against Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech last year. And also, since Kendall Marshall, their point guard, came into the starting lineup towards the end of the season, 18 games, he's averaged over 20 points. If they can play a half-court team, they can play a fast pace, they can play physical, they have it all.
They have it all. When you look at North Carolina, too, again, 5 returning starters for Roy Williams, including Harrison Barnes, Tyler Zeller, John Henson. People thought all 3 of them might be sitting as first-round picks in the NBA draft, but my goodness, what an offseason it was for the coach because they all came back.
It was surprising that all 3 of them came back. You know, John and Z, in my opinion, didn't really seriously think that much about leaving. They enjoy college basketball. They're kids that have a lot of fun. Harrison is very analytical, just enjoyed his experience. Both of us have had a lot of guys leave early and have done very well, and that's what's going to, we hope, continue to happen. If you have guys leaving early, that means your team's been pretty doggone good. But it was a neat thing, and all of a sudden, you know, so we were really going to be good.
Yeah.
And the good thing about college basketball, it still doesn't mean anything because there's a lot of teams that are going to be good.
Well, everybody loves Harrison Barnes. Slow start last year for Harrison Barnes. What do we expect this season?
Well, he's got the swagger. He's got the it. I've talked to some NBA scouts that said they've seen him already in preseason, and he's got his confidence. He can score from anywhere on the floor, and he makes his teammates better.
Tough maybe when you come into expectations like he did coming out of Ames, Iowa. All right, how about the team number 6 in the country to start the season? That's Mike Krzyzewski's Duke Blue Devils, a 32-game winner a year ago before they got stung by Derek Williams like so many other teams did last season. That happened for them in the Sweet 16. You know who they bring in? Austin Rivers. Everybody talking about Doc's young son.
Well, he's a talented kid who wants to be better, and dominant offensive player in high school, one of the most dominant, and now he's learning about other aspects of the game. But wants to learn about those aspects, and while he's learning about those aspects, you don't want him to forget about the thing that he does real well. So that's always the balance that you have. But I love Austin.
Adrian Branch. They also have Marshall Plumlee, Miles Plumlee, and Mason Plumlee.
MP1, MP2, MP3 is what they call him. And for Mason, he's the most athletic. He blocks shots. He plays above the rim. He's still a work in progress with his jump hook. But if it doesn't work for him, he can call his big brother Miles, who is like Beauty and the Beast. They are as tough as they get down low.
How about Florida State? Maybe this is the 3rd best team in this league. They finished 3rd in the league a year ago. 3 returning starters here for Leonard Hamilton's team. And boy, were you telling me they're not getting enough love in the preseason?
It's laughable. They should be nationally ranked.
No kidding. What do you like about Florida State?
Well, they know who they are. They're tough and they're defensive. And this young man, Bernard James, is impressive. The face of the program right now. Remember, he did military service. He's a war veteran, but he blocked shots above the rim. He and Akara White will dominate down low, and they have the mindset that you're not going to score them. They're looking forward to playing against the top teams in the nation because they think they're the bullies on the block.
Clemson would like to be the 3rd best team if they can't be 1 or 2. No question about that. 22-12. Brad Brownell entering year number 2 as the Tigers head coach. And if Clemson's going to make that kind of a run or even supplant Florida State as the 3rd best in that league, who's going to do it?
Well, they're not flashy like their team, but look for Milton Jennings and also their point guard that can score down on the floor, down low. You're looking at Andre Young that controls the ball, throws it to Tanner Smith. They have experience. They also have defense. They'll lock you up 40% from the field, is one of the best in the conference. Not a flashy team, but effective.
Tony Bennett's Virginia Cavaliers, you see what they did a year ago. They surprised a lot of teams, but this year there's some expectations out of this crew.
And that's legitimate. That's legitimate. This team is a defensive-minded team. Again, we just mentioned Clemson. That's not a flashy team. This team is not flashy, but they do have Mike Scott coming back. What did he do? He averaged a double-double the first time since Ralph Sampson. 15 points, 10 rebounds. He is going to be very good with a Son Sin down low, 7-footer. In fact, I talked to their coaching staff, and they said they passed the eyeball test because they were a small team last season.
I got to say, if Tony Bennett had a flashy team, I don't think he'd like this team. That's not Tony Bennett. Seth Greenberg and Virginia Tech, you see him last year. Guess where they were in March? On the bubble, like they are every March. How does this team get off the bubble, AB?
They're gonna be better this year. I have them going to the tournament. They're a deeper team than last year. They have length, they have athletes, and they have guys that can rebound and play multiple positions. Eric Green is going to be one of the best players in the conference. Point guard that controls the game, averaged 31 minutes a game last year playing with Malcolm Delaney in the backcourt. And also Dorenzo Hudson. Remember 2 years ago, he was one of the top 12 players in the ACC as a guard. He's back.
BC, Steve Donahue. How many returning starters? 0. AB, my goodness. Hill to climb here, sir. How do they climb it?
The young pups, they're going to be a work in progress, but it does help when you have a 7-footer and a freshman. Dennis Clifford is going to be the guy that's going to be playing for them. Also, Gabe Morton, their scrappy point guard, will be controlling things. He's a veteran as a sophomore, but again, this is a team that's going to be a work in progress. Matt Humphrey, the transfer from Oregon, also will be a key starter for them. They're going to come out and compete and try to shoot the basketball.
9 freshmen for Boston College. All right, Wake Forest comes in, 3 returning starters, but this was an all-time worst conference record for the Demon Deacons, 1-15 a year ago. It's going to be a project here for Wake Forest, but where do they look if they want to improve?
Well, they have a star in Travis McKay that also can play any position out there on the floor. They don't have a margin of error. They don't have a lot of depth, but also they have Tony Chenault back there, point guard, that can get them into easy shots. This is a team that simply has to get better day by day. It'll be a work in progress. They don't have a margin of error.
8 wins overall, their fewest since winning 8 games in the 85-86 season. Meanwhile, don't forget, big day in the ACC, big day for Duke, November 11th. That's a Friday on ESPNU. Coach K, a 30-minute special on his climb to the top. He's 2 wins shy of his old coach, Bobby Knight's Division I men's basketball record. College basketball live after that, 6:30 Eastern. And then number 1, well, defending national champion. Number 4, Connecticut, starts the season against Columbia. And then Coach K goes for 9:01 at 9 Eastern time, and then 9:02 to tie Bob Knight. Could come on Saturday on ESPNU. Straight ahead, what do our experts think of the ACC? Who is the favorite? Who might surprise? It's a great panel coming your way in moments. The media in the ACC likes North Carolina, and in dramatic fashion. 57 of the 59 first-place votes. North Carolina expected to win the ACC. Duke, a second-place team. Florida State, as AB would agree, sitting at 3rd in the preseason poll. All right, how about more on the ACC and our incredible panel of experts headed up by Hubert Davis?
Let's talk about the ACC, and obviously we've got to start off with North Carolina. I think they have the best combination in the country in terms of talent and experience. Let's talk about North Carolina, what they have to do this year in order to be ACC champions, possibly national champions, and what teams in this conference that can challenge them during this race.
You know, Hubert, I see the ACC as being a 2-tiered league. It's a very good league, but North Carolina and Duke are separated from the rest of the pack. And there have been so many coaching changes in the league over the last few years that I think the rest of the league is still trying to catch up. The big question, I think, is going to be not will North Carolina or Duke win the league. I think North Carolina is the best team, but who finishes 3rd? And there are a number of teams that are capable of doing that. But to get back to your original question about North Carolina, they've got an NBA front line. They've got an amazing amount of talent back. Now they've got even more depth with James McAdoo coming in and P.J. Harrison on the perimeter. Last year, I thought they were better on the defensive end than they were on the offensive end. That's a little bit unusual given how good they've been offensively over the years. I think they'll get better offensively. I think their shooting will improve. I think Harrison Barnes will improve and be a National Player of the Year candidate right there with Jared Sullinger of Ohio State. I see North Carolina as being the best team. The question is, can Duke get the point guard play they need from Seth Curry initially at that position to be able to challenge North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, the point guard question is something that, you know, Duke is going to have to contend with throughout the season, but Mike Krzyzewski has always found a way to adapt. And, you know, when you're talking about the backcourt, Seth Curry has had the experience in playing there, but now with the addition of Austin Rivers, who's just an outstanding offensive player, you got guys who are more willing to share the ball, obviously, and you got the big front line. They play their roles in offensive rebound, etc. Maybe the point guard question isn't nearly as loud. But when you talk about teams that are going to have a say in who finishes third, fourth, actually who finishes first and second, I'm looking at a team like Miami, which is very explosive offensively, great guard play with Scott and Grant, and then Reggie Johnson, who's recovering from knee surgery. He's the X factor there. If he can hold down the middle and play the way he did, almost a double-double every single night, you know, this is going to be a test for Miami to be able to cut into that legend of North Carolina as well as Duke. And don't forget Virginia with Mike Scott back. You know, this is a team that's scrappy enough to be able to contend.
Last year, it was Steve Lavin coming out of the broadcast booth and going and, you know, doing great things at St. John's. This year, Mark Godfrey was sitting in these chairs last year. Now he's at North Carolina State. Lost Ryan Harrow, who I thought was a terrific freshman point guard. Last year, North Carolina State, to me, was a bit of a mess. I mean, they looked like they were disinterested. They looked disorganized. Part of that was youth. Part of that was maybe the structure of the program. Mark Godfrey brings certainly credentials that people will trust. And look, to two kids, C.J. Leslie, who came in so highly touted. But again, when I did their game, he had no interest in being coached. He needs to have an interest in being coached. Now, in Scotty Woods, kid who's a 6'7" shooter, guys like that in their senior year.
Where's he from?
He's from Indiana, by the way. In their senior year, because they're from Indiana, they have a tendency to rise up and have a great year.
If C.J. Leslie fights the coaching staff, NC State is just going to be okay. If he doesn't and he buys in, they got a chance to finish third or fourth. I go back to the top of the league, though. North Carolina, to me, you know, in 2009, they won the national championship, and they had guys that very well could have been lottery picks, and they all came back, and coach set them down and said, if you come back, make sure you're coming back not to audition for the NBA. I think it's the same thing this year. You've got to make sure that the reason, the Henson and Zeller and Barnes, why are they back in a Carolina uniform? It's to win a national championship and to keep other guys out of their ears. Jay mentioned them offensively last year. They weren't the firepower that they have been in the past. Harrison Barnes can take the ball anywhere he wants on the floor. He's as big as he needs to be. Doesn't need to be any bigger. But they are going to run some flex action this year with Harrison Barnes cutting off of Tyler Zeller, which will be simple action, much like we've seen Maryland do in that league year after year. Very, very difficult to defend. I think Roy Williams will score that ball around the rim in a lot of different ways this year.
I cannot believe you guys have mentioned North Carolina without, to me, the guy that changed the whole season, and that's Kendall Marshall. And you know, Hubert, you played at North Carolina. I remember Phil Ford, Jimmy Black, all the great players. To me, this kid has as good a vision in terms of passing the ball as maybe anybody I can ever remember playing that position at Carolina. Not that he's the best point guard to ever play there, but they went 17-3 after Larry Drew left and he took over the team. I love the front line, but they got easy baskets because it was his show.
Well, he continues to make the right play. When I look at him play, and this is an example about 2 or 3 years ago, Stephen Curry was a senior at Davidson, and I was at practice, and Coach Bob McKillop kept telling Stephen Curry, we don't need home runs, we just need singles. And what he was saying is you just need to make the fundamental play. We don't need a highlight reel. We don't need anything that needs to go straight to SportsCenter. Just make the right play, and that's what Kendall Marshall does. He makes the right play, the fundamental play, over and over again on a consistent basis. You talked about 2009 having those guys come back. Same thing happened in 2005 with Sean May and Raymond Felton. Guys that could have gone early to the NBA draft decide to come back. It'll be interesting to see if that works out this year to get their 3rd championship in the last 8 years.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see who are the teams that might be able to challenge them. I don't think anybody else in the league is going to finish ahead of North Carolina or ahead of Duke. But I do think Florida State's a team that's capable of finishing 3rd in this league. Bernard James, a lefty that can block shots, that can run. Florida State's very good defensively. Michael Sneer comes back, who needs to really step up, I think, his scoring production. Then they've got a freshman named Antoine Space who comes in. He's 6'7", very athletic. He's going to step in and play. I think Ian Miller's going to have a better year. Florida State is quietly getting better and better as a program and much more consistent with expecting to win. And I think that's an NCAA tournament team that Leonard Hamilton.
You know, Lenny, they got 10 guys back. And, you know, they lost Chris Singleton, so they're kind of like Derek Williams in Arizona. But They got 10 guys that played a lot, and Bernard James, as you mentioned, came on really strong. I think the most underrated player in their program, the guy that has a chance to be great, is Okoro White, the sophomore.